Sinister secrets of the haunted town, revealed after 30 years of terrifying underground fire. Julia stood in the silent kitchen, the remnants of Maplewood pressing heavily against her heart. The once vibrant town lay in shambles, swallowed whole by a terrible fire that had consumed children and dreams alike. Blackened memories lurked in every corner of her new home, which creaked and groaned like a forgotten specter. As the last rays of sunlight stumbled through grimy windows, a shiver ran down her spine. She felt that the town's tragedy was more than history. It breathed, whispered, and waited. That night, when her children slept, she explored what felt like the bones of the abandoned house. Peeling wallpaper revealed strange symbols, while the floorboards moaned underfoot, complaining of years of loneliness. Then, beneath a loose tile, she found a trapdoor. Her pulse quickened as she pried it open, revealing stairs leading into darkness. Heart racing, Julia descended into the fearsome chill of the basement, where the air turned thick with unspoken terror. Dust motes danced like tortured souls in the weak light of her flashlight. She stumbled upon charred toys scattered across the ground, their edges ragged, blackened by flames long extinguished. Photographs, warped and soot-stained, revealed smiling faces that had lived in happier times, now reduced to mere ghosts. And then, oh God, a diary, yellowed and brittle, resting in a cobwebbed corner. Its pages told of a sinister ritual, a call to darkness meant to protect the town. Each word struck like a hammer against her chest. Suddenly, a low whisper cut through the stillness. "Get out!" a voice taunted, barely a breath, but buzzing like a swarm of bees. Julia turned sharply, skin crawling, but saw nothing, only shadows that seemed to inch closer with each flicker of her light. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The night dragged on, and dark thoughts consumed her mind. Outside, the wind howled, or was it something more? She couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching, lurking just beyond her splintered walls. Mr. Hargrove, her neighbor, stood at the edge of their property, observing her with eyes so cold they could freeze fire. His presence was unsettling, too familiar, sending prickling fingers of dread racing down her spine every time he lingered. Had he seen her in the basement? Did he know what lay beneath? As days passed, the children laughed, but their joy felt like a fragile glass vase on the edge of a table, ready to shatter at any moment. Julia had begun to hear more whispers at night, voices that wound around her like creeping vines, wrapping tighter with peculiar insistence. The townspeople, initially friendly, turned wary, casting glances that shimmered with undisguised suspicion. It felt like they were part of some twisted web, hiding ugly truths beneath a facade of charm. When a storm rolled into Maplewood, the air buzzed ominously like a charged balloon. The heartbeat of the town quickened, and Julia felt the deep connection between it and the malevolent presence she now sensed. She was ready to confront Mr. Hargrove, to pull the truth from him about the fire's legacy, but she couldn't shake the reality that someone or something might not want her to. As thunder rolled overhead, shadows slithered closer. What lay behind Maplewood's facade? Julia stood at the edge of terror, mouth dry, heart pounding, as she realized the truth her family might unearth would lead her to save them or doom them all. The storm cracked wide open, releasing a torrent of rain that blurred Julia's view of the world outside. The house groaned as if the very walls were shifting under the oppressive weight of memories. She peered out the window, but all she saw was darkness, an impenetrable shroud lit only by the occasional flicker of lightning. "Mom?" A soft voice broke through the silence. Her daughter, Lily, emerged from the shadows of the hallway, clutching a teddy bear that looked as if it had survived the fires of hell itself. "I heard something." "Just the storm, sweetheart," Julia replied, forcing a smile that felt too brittle for her own comfort. But even as she spoke, an uneasy knot twisted in her gut. It wasn't just thunder that lingered in that house, it was something far deeper, something that had awakened with the storm. As she ushered Lily back to bed, Julia's thoughts raced. She couldn't shake the urge to confront the darkness head-on. Curiosity gnawed at her, urging her to dive deeper into the mysteries hidden in the town. She couldn't let fear control her, not with so much at stake. With a renewed sense of determination, Julia wrapped herself in a thick sweater and made her way toward the trapdoor once more. It beckoned her like a siren's song. The basement held the answers, and she had to know. The staircase creaked under her weight, echoing ominously in the confined space. Gripping her flashlight tightly, she descended into the cloak of darkness. This time, she would be ready. The air felt different, charged, almost alive, pulsating with unearthly energy. Julia flipped the switch on the flashlight. The beam cut through the blackness, revealing the charred toys and ghostly photographs with a sharp clarity that struck her like a physical blow. She approached the diary again, almost reverently, realizing the burnt edges were warning signs rather than mere wear. As she flipped through its pages, frantic scribbles turned legible. The town's history spilled forth in jagged sentences, detailing sacrifices meant to preserve something unknown, a bargain with the darkness. Her heart raced. Were the townspeople aware of this? Was Mr. Hargrove a guardian, or was he part of something more sinister? Then she heard it again, the faint whisper, crawling through her mind like ivy. Get out! It was no longer just a voice, it felt like a presence that wrapped itself around her, squeezing harder. Breath coming in short gasps, Julia fought against the growing panic. Suddenly, there was a loud crash upstairs, the sound of something heavy striking the floor. Julia jumped, every muscle coiling tightly, as dread washed over her. Someone or something was in the house. She felt it knotting her stomach, pulling her between two worlds, the one above filled with her trembling children, and the one below where the answers danced teasingly out of reach. Children. She whispered harshly, cutting through the suffocating fear. Stay where you are. Panic gripped her as she realized she had to decide. Would she flee up the stairs to protect her kids, abandoning the terrifying secrets? Or would she confront whatever lingered above, risking everything to uncover what Maplewood truly wanted from her? The air felt electric, a waiting silence pressing against her ears. The decision hovered like a specter in the shadows, and with each heartbeat, Julia knew that the moment was slipping away. Just then, another crash rocked the house. It sounded like it was coming from the kitchen. A chill crawled down her spine. She couldn't run. Not now. But as she took a step forward, she felt something icy brush against her neck, like fingers whispering their secrets into her ear. The storm raged heavier, blurring the line between safety and danger. Would she face the truth or retreat from the darkness that had thrived for decades? Julia held her ground, the weight of powerlessness bearing down as the truth grappled within the storm. Outside, lightning illuminated the sky, revealing a figure standing in the yard, just beyond reach. Was it Mr. Hargrove or something worse? Gripping her flashlight tighter, Julia prepared to either save her family or uncover the horrors that had slumbered too long in Maplewood. Would she step into the light or succumb to the beckoning shadows? Julia's heart thundered in her chest as she edged toward the kitchen, dread pooling in her stomach. Each step felt as if the floor beneath her teetered at the brink of collapse. A low growl echoed through the stillness, almost drowned out by the deafening storm. The whisper in her ear turned cold, urging her to turn back, but she pushed forward, squeezing the flashlight until her knuckles turned white. Lily, stay close to your brother. She shouted back upstairs, her voice shaking. The thunder cracked in response, rattling the windows like the bones of the house. Inside the kitchen, the chaos unfolded like a scene from a nightmare. Milk splattered across the floor, the fridge door swung open, and shattered glass crunched underfoot. Julia felt something shift in the air, a heaviness that stung her breath. This was not just a storm, it was something foul, something alive. She swept the beam of her flashlight across the room. A shadow flitted past the corner of her vision, quick and wrong. Julia's pulse quickened. Who's there? she called, the bravado clashing with her fear. Silence loomed, thick and blinding, then, a soft sound, like a child's weeping, filtered through the chaos. It came from the pantry, an endless ache woven into each sob. Julia stumbled closer, torn between fear and the instinct to comfort. Peeking into the darkness, she found nothing but empty shelves lined with dust, a graveyard for expired foods. The sobbing ceased abruptly, plunging her into an eerie stillness. "What?" she whispered, icy dread creeping up her spine. "Show yourself." Suddenly, her flashlight flickered before dying, plunging her into darkness. Panic swept over her as she fumbled to find a backup. The growl grew louder, more insistent, a warning vibrating through the very walls. Then, the air grew colder, like an invisible hand gripping her throat. A gnarled figure emerged from the shadowy corner of the kitchen, its face obscured and twisted, grotesque. It wore a ruffled dress stitched together like a haunted quilt. "She wants you," it rasped, the voice sickeningly soft, yet laced with malice. "She wants her mother." Julia's stomach dropped. Who was it referring to? Was it Lily? "Get away from my daughter." Julia gasped, inching backward, desperately scanning for an escape. The figure lunged forward, moving with unnatural speed. Julia spun around just as it reached her, adrenaline flooding her veins. She burst through the doorway into the hallway, heart racing, mind reeling. The laughter of children filled her ears, buoyant and joyful, an unsettling contrast to the chaos behind her. "Mommy!" Lily called with innocent cheer, but behind that sweetness was a layer of something darker. Julia's heart sank as she realized the laughter didn't belong to her children. She darted toward the voices, frantic. But the shadows creeping from the walls seemed to snicker at her, dancing just out of reach. The voice beckoned sweetly, "They are playing, Mommy. Come join us." Terror coursed through Julia. Were the whispers real? Or simply echoes of the twisted town's history? She felt herself unraveling, as if the very fabric of reality was slipping, revealing a sinister truth too monstrous to bear. "Stay put!" she shouted, fighting the urge to run back upstairs. She couldn't succumb to despair, could she? The children's laughter mingled with the storm like a siren's call, each note promising safety but hiding deadly intentions. Julia resolved to steady herself. She squared her shoulders and forced herself to face the darkness closing in, ready to defy whatever nightmare Maplewood had unleashed. A decision had to be made, and it loomed as large as the storm above. The kitchen door swung open one last time, revealing a swirling mass of shadows, and from within emerged a figure wearing a lopsided smile. It pointed toward the basement, its finger twisting like a gnarled branch. "It's down there, Julia. All the answers. Are you ready to find out what she wants?" As the figure vanished, Julia found herself staring at the trapdoor. The past was pulling her deeper into a darkness she could no longer ignore. But as she took a step toward the door, she felt something icy wrap around her ankle. This time, running wasn't an option. The truth lay ahead, but it was shrouded in thickening shadows. With every heartbeat, she wondered, were her children still safe? Would she uncover the truth, or lose them all in the process? As the presence tightened its grip, Julia steeled herself for what awaited below. The damp wood creaked as she raised the hatch, the musty scent of long-forgotten memories wafting up to meet her. She whispered to herself, "Just one more step." But already, she felt the darkness above stir, and the air thickened with more than just rain. What awaited her beneath the floorboards? Would it force her to confront what she had long buried? Julia's breath quickened as she descended into the dark. Each step down the creaking stairs felt like an echo of her childhood fears, the kind that lurked in the corners of her imagination during stormy nights. This wasn't just a basement. It was a vault of memories, secrets wrapped in the damp embrace of mold and rot. As she reached the damp floor, a cold draft whipped through the shadows, teasing her senses. The beam from her flashlight carved a path through the thick darkness, revealing cobwebs that hung like curtains. The beams of wood overhead felt closer, compressed by looming dread. Whispers danced around her, disembodied voices weaving through the air like wisps of smoke. She gripped the flashlight tighter, unsure who or what was watching her from the shadows. "Lily, Ethan," she called, but the echoes swallowed her voice. For a moment, she considered that she stood alone in her search for answers, but the laughter still rang in her ears, taunting her, weaving its way into her thoughts like poison. In the far corner, a rusted trunk caught her eye, sitting there, waiting. With every cautious step toward it, the weight of the air thickened. What lay inside? Maybe it would give her clues, answers, or perhaps even a way out of this nightmare. Fueled by a mixture of hope and dread, she knelt before the trunk, feeling the rough texture of dust-coated metal beneath her fingertips. With a shaky breath, she lifted the lid. A powerful stench rose up, overwhelming her senses. Inside were toys, broken dolls with glassy eyes that seemed to follow her movements, frayed teddy bears whose soft fur had long since rotted away. Among them, she spotted a small, familiar item, a faded drawing, done in her daughter's scrawled handwriting, depicting a family with wide smiles. "Why?" Julia murmured, her voice trembling as a flurry of questions assaulted her mind. The basement groaned, as if the house itself were alive, protesting her presence. Suddenly, the whispers intensified, filling her mind with jarring images: a long-forgotten birthday party, a game gone awry, shadows creeping ever closer. It was too much. She slammed the trunk closed, desperate to shut out the memories clawing their way to the surface. But with that action, the temperature dropped further, a biting cold wrapping around her shoulders like a shroud. "Help us!" a child's voice pierced through the clamor, but this time it was different. It was clear, desperate, filled with sorrow. Her heart raced. "Who are you?" Julia shouted into the darkness, each word sharp with fear. Then, a flicker of movement caught her eye. The flashlight glinted off a mirror dusted with years of neglect. There she saw not just her reflection, but something behind her, a child, barely visible, hauntingly familiar yet so wrong. "Mommy," it whispered, reaching out with a hand that faded like mist, fingers stretching toward her with a pleading desperation. "No!" Julia cried, stepping back. The reality around her distorted, the basement walls seemed to shift, narrowing in, swallowing her whole. Panic surged through her like electricity. Was this a trick of her mind, or had the town truly captured the innocence of her children? Mustering her resolve, Julia felt a new urgency. She couldn't break down now. She was their mother, she had to fight. But fighting what? Whatever lingered in the abyss needed to be faced, and the reminders of loss would not stop until she discovered what had happened so long ago. With each moment, the darkness pressed in closer. Julia was left with only the echo of the mirrored child's words swirling in her head like a thunderous storm. "Leave," echoed another voice now, sinister and hissing, weaving its way through her consciousness. Would the truth save them, or was it as dark and twisted as the shadows that wrapped around her? Every instinct screamed for her to flee. But deep down, she knew she had to push forward. "I'm coming!" Julia shouted into the encroaching gloom, prepared to plunge deeper into the mystery of the basement. What awaited her in this shadowy underworld that had swallowed her? Children's laughter hole? The answers hung tantalizingly out of reach, teasing her sanity, challenging her resolve. Could she uncover the truth in time, or would she too become merely another whisper in the darkness? A heavy silence enveloped Julia as she stood at the edge of the dark basement. The whispers had quieted, almost as if the very shadows were holding their breath. She clutched the flashlight, its beam flickering against the damp walls. Suddenly, the air shifted, a palpable tension filling the space like a storm about to break. "Mommy," the voice drifted again, soft yet unwavering, echoing through the basement like a memory clawing its way to the surface. Her heart raced, a sickening twist of fear and urgency flooding her veins. Where was Lily? Where was Ethan? She couldn't be too late. Julia took a step forward, her footfall echoing through the hollow depths. Each creak of the old wood beneath her made her stomach churn, as if the house itself were alive, watching, waiting. She squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, tasting the metallic scent of fear in her mouth. No focus. She muttered under her breath, scrambling to find clarity in the chaos that threatened to consume her. There it was again, the flicker and outline barely visible at the back of the basement. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but she pushed against them, forward into the darkness. The shadows coiled and shifted, almost inviting her deeper, promising to reveal the truths locked in their embrace. She mustered her courage, the thought of her children driving her onward. As she approached the flicker of movement, the beam of her flashlight caught something glimmering on the ground. With a shaky hand, she bent down, brushing away layers of dust and decay. It was a locket, small, intricate, and unmistakably familiar. The same one she had given Lily on her last birthday. Her breath hitched in her throat, choking back the well of tears that threatened to spill. "Lily!" she cried out, holding the locket close to her chest. Silence answered her, thick and grotesque. The shadows danced more fervently, taunting her resolve. And then she saw it, an opening. A narrow passageway leading deeper into the heart of the basement, shrouded in thick mist. It wasn't there a moment ago, she was sure of it. Julia felt her skin prickling with a mix of fear and determination. This must be where the whispers were coming from. This was where she needed to go. Tentatively, she stepped into the passage, squeezing through rocks and debris, every instinct warning her that this was where nightmares lived. The cold air prickled her skin as she delved deeper into the unknown. "Help us!" echoed once more, this time louder, filled with a sense of urgency that sent chills down her spine. "Is anyone there?" Julia called out, her voice barely above a whisper. She pressed on, the darkness now rising around her like a tide, swallowing the meager light of her flashlight. Then suddenly, she stumbled. The beam caught the edges of something alive. It slithered between her feet, a child's favorite toy, a small, rotting stuffed bunny with a pale, lopsided grin. Julia recoiled, horrified as the eyes of the toy seemed to follow her every movement, pixelated by dust and decay. "Mommy," the voice pleaded again, this time desperate, filled with a promise of hope twisted into despair. "What happened to you?" She shouted into the oppressive dark, but the only reply was the dull thud of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears, mixed with the palpable tension surrounding her. Julia's hand trembled, directing the flashlight towards the depths of the passage. In the swirling shadows, she could make out three figures, a glimpse of her children's familiar shapes, but something was deeply wrong. They were reaching out, hands grasping, mouths silently screaming. "Julia, help us!" Their faces twisted in anguish, a horror that paralyzed her. The walls felt like they were closing in, crushing the air from her lungs. Julia took a step back, heart pounding. Had she come too late? Had the town snatched her children forever? Just then, the echoing whisper returned, louder and more vicious than ever. "Leave now or join them." The basement trembled, a low rumble shaking the ground beneath her. What was she meant to do? What price would she pay to save her children? The answer hovered just out of reach, elusive as ever. Julia felt the walls creep closer, fear constricting around her throat like a vice. She took a deep breath, eyes locked on the quivering shadows. "I'm not leaving you." But without warning, the ground beneath her feet crumbled, and as she tumbled into the black void, a chilling thought struck her: was she but a whisper in this nightmare too? Darkness engulfed her as the passageway closed tight, and she braced for what horrors lurked ahead. Would the truth consume her? Or could it finally set them free? Julia's fall felt endless, pulling her deeper into an abyss where time and space twisted upon themselves. Cold air wrapped around her, suffocating in its intensity. Her flashlight flickered, battling against the suffocating dark. Just as abruptly, she hit the ground, not a soft landing, but a brutal jolt that knocked the breath from her lungs. Gasping, she pushed herself up, her heart racing as the last remnants of light sputtered out. All around her, the darkness pulsed like a living thing, pressing against her, hungry and expectant. Panic clawed at her throat, she needed to regain control before terror consumed her. "Lily? Ethan?" She called hoarsely, forcing her voice to break through the oppressive silence. The faintest sound drifted back, a muffled cry, a whisper mingled with the shadows. "Mommy," the voice inside the dark trembled, having an effect that sent shivers down her spine. It was so close, yet tauntingly far. Julia scrambled to her feet, her palms slick with sweat. She couldn't afford to stay paralyzed in fear, not now. She reached out, her hands gliding along the side of the rough cavern walls, searching for something, anything to give her direction. Each scrape of her fingers sent jolts of pain ricocheting across her mind, but she pressed on. Desperation forced her forward, then a glimmer. Not the familiar beam of her flashlight, but something else, shimmering in the absolute blackness. Julia pressed closer, squinting, hoping to discover a path, a doorway, a sign. It sparkled again, and she realized it was the remnants of glass pieces from shattered mirrors lying scattered on the ground. Kneeling, she brushed her fingers over the shards, sharp edges biting into her flesh. A sudden feeling of dread washed over her. What were these doing here? They weren't merely reflections at that moment, she felt the walls of her mind begin to collapse. Out of the shards, reflections began to swirl. She saw images, distorted faces, twisted expressions of terror, all whispering her name, Julia. The voices mingled together in a ghostly symphony. They were trapped like her. Julia could feel it crashing over her like a wave of ice. "No! I'm not like you!" she shouted, battling the chorus of anguish that enveloped her. But even as she screamed, she could see Lily's frightened, cherubic face staring back at her. "Mommy, help us!" It rang clear, cutting through the haze of despair. Julia's heart shattered at the desperation in her daughter's eyes. "Lily!" she yelled, lunging for the vision, but as she reached out, the glass shards cut into her hand. Blood dripped onto the remnants, and suddenly, one voice broke through the din, "Join us." In an instant, the darkness shifted, forming a ripple, a pathway that spiraled into an unknown depth. It was a choice: acquiesce and submit, or forge ahead against the tide of darkness. "Please! Let me save my children!" she cried out, the mere thought of giving up feeling like a betrayal. A shadow rolled away, revealing a faint light at the end of the passage. She forced herself to move toward it, her breath coming in short gasps. With each step, she felt the weight of countless souls pressing against her, clawing for release. Closer now, the light flickered with hope until it dimmed unexpectedly, and fear gripped her harder. "What is happening?" Julia stammered, glancing over her shoulder. Behind her, faces emerged from the shadows, twisted, sorrowful, eyes wide with despair. Their mouths moved in silent screams. With a deafening rush, their whispers crescendoed, wrapping around her tightly, demanding her submission. "You are one of us now." Julia, panicking, she looked back at the light, now dim and flickering, as if it too was losing the battle against the shadows. What lay in the dark? What was the cost of venturing deeper? She had to choose. Suddenly, the light blinked out altogether, plunging her into suffocating darkness once more. The whispers quieted, hanging in the air like smoke. "Help us!" it began again, only this time, the voices were chillingly familiar. A single thought slammed into Julia's mind: was there an escape? Or had she unwittingly become part of this nightmare, entwined within its sinister grasp, just another soul lost in the terrifying maze of the haunted town? As she clutched her wounded hand, feeling the warmth of her blood on her skin, a low rumble shook the ground. The fear tightening around her felt almost like an embrace now, and with a hesitant breath, she leaned into the shadows. Any moment could unleash unspeakable horrors, but what if it held the key to finding her children? The darkness drew closer, whispering promises of other realms, making her wonder whether it offered salvation or destruction. Julia took a step forward, curiosity and terror battling inside her. What awaited her in the darkness? Would she discover the truth, or was it the end of everything she held dear? The air shifted, thickening as Julia advanced into the shadowy passage. Each step felt unnatural, nearly a mockery of movement, as if the ground itself sought to swallow her whole. It held a chill that seeped into her bones, whispering ancient secrets of dread meant only for her. She strained her ears, attempting to catch whispers woven through the silence, the voices desperate, the sound stretching thin like old yarn fraying at the edges. "Mommy." The call drifted again, haunting her memories, an echo of the pulsing love that had brought her here. "Help us." The voices raced through her mind, entwining every thought with fear. Someone else was down here with her. Someone who shared this darkness, this longing. She pressed her back against the cold wall and closed her eyes, fighting the swell of despair. Behind them, those tormented faces strained, a silent chorus pressing for release. Julia couldn't become their story, she would not. She had to keep moving, deeper into the shadows she went, the path narrowing as if the walls themselves were closing in. Suddenly, gusts of wind rattled through the cavern, causing a cacophony of tortured groans, like the cries of the lost and the damned. She stumbled, reaching out to regain her balance, but found nothing solid, only shadows clawing back at her. "Stay away!" she shrieked, voice breaking against the darkness. But no sooner did she utter those words than the walls seemed to pulse, responding to her fear, the air alive with something otherworldly, something ancient. A metallic taste flooded her mouth as she bit her tongue, holding back the swell of panic that threatened to undo her. Julia veered sharply, turning on her heel, driven by a desperate instinct. She had to escape this corridor, this sinister embrace. But every direction felt the same, shapeless, seamless, hiding every exit. She leaned against the rough surface, inhaling sharply, her thoughts racing. What was this place? Where had her children gone? "Mommy, you must." The voice tugged at her heart as it twisted itself into something deeper. It was more than just a plea, it was an invitation, a lure that sparked a sinking hope. Could Lily be guiding her? Follow. An icy fear coursed through Julia. She felt the darkness waiting, watching, measuring her intent. The wind swirled with a sinister delight, sending her hair whipping around her face. Her pulse quickened. The whispers began again, crying out with urgency, intertwining with each other, "Fight or join, what will you choose?" As if pulled by invisible strings, Julia found herself stepping closer to the shimmer of light that flickered ahead. Her heart thundered, a resolve building within her that she wouldn't let her children down, not now, not when the end felt so near. She needed to reach them, they were relying on her, but as she stepped into the light, the truth of her surroundings crystallized. A grand chamber opened around her, filled with broken mirrors, shards glinting like teeth awaiting to pierce flesh. Her breath hitched. Reflections writhed in the shards, displaying not only her own terrified visage but those of her children, lost souls caught in frantic motions, mouths opening and closing in muted screams. They reached toward Julia, fingers stretching but never reaching. "Mommy," they pleaded, their reflected eyes wide with fear, a helplessness that obliterated her heart. The realization crashed down on her, she wasn't just navigating a winding path. This was a trap, a labyrinth of despair designed to ensnare the unsuspecting. Each mirror held a fraction of truth twisted by darkness, each reflection a person absorbed into this nightmare. "Join us," came the whispers slowly, chillingly, wrapping around her, and suddenly, the air became electric with tension. Julia's pulse raced, her heart hammered so hard she thought it might leap from her chest. "Please, no!" she screamed, stepping back instinctively. But the shadows surged forward, feelers of darkness eager to claim her too, weaving their way into the fabric of her mind. Just then, a loud crash echoed through the chamber, shaking the walls. The ground trembled violently, throwing Julia off balance. The mirrors shattered, and the whispers crescendoed like a storm. She stumbled forward as the darkness writhed around her, pulling her toward the center of the chamber, the heart of this primal chaos. As fissures began to appear, the echoes of her children's voices faded into a haunting silence, the promises of rescue now a distant memory. What would happen next? Would she become yet another echo in this dark place? Or could she fight against the shadows threatening to drag her away from everything she loved? Julia gripped her arms tightly, heart racing. The ground rumbled, shadows clawing around her feet and thunder cracked above in a violent storm, harbingers of the impending chaos. Uncertainty bolted through her veins, fueling a new resolve. This wasn't over. Not yet. With a furious scream, she prepared to charge headlong into the darkness, poised to confront whatever loomed before her. But what awaited her in the untamed blackness? Would the terror consume her entirely, or might it just hold the answers to saving her children? The ground heaved beneath Julia's feet, echoing like a monster awakening from a centuries-long slumber. The crashing sounds of shattering glass were quickly drowned out by the desperate cries of her children's voices that twisted in the air, wrapping around her like chains and pulling her deeper into the abyss of despair. "Mommy! Help!" They were so close yet trapped. Her heart ached with a sharp pang, the kind that felt as if it might tear her apart. Shadows danced closer, their forms shifting with malevolent glee, hungry for the warmth of her soul. "Fight!" A new voice shouted over the cacophony, sharp and piercing. Julia had to find the strength. It was there, buried deep within her, a flickering ember amidst the darkness. She concentrated on it, clutching the memory of warm summers and laughter, the sweet scent of her children's hair after a bath. She focused harder. Each breath was a battle against the weight of darkness pressing down on her. With a fierce cry, she pushed through the tightening band of shadow, sprinting toward the echo of her children. The ground writhed beneath her, threatening to swallow her whole. She stumbled, but with grit teeth and pumping legs, she clawed her way forward, refusing to surrender. "Mommy, please." Lily's voice was sharp now, filled with both urgency and something deeper fear. The warmth of it surged through Julia, growing hotter against the cold tendrils of shadow that brushed her skin. This was not just a call for help, it was a lifeline, a thread woven into the very fabric of their bond. As she fought her way through, the mirrors around her began to whisper once again, echoing her struggle. Join us, they taunted, reflecting darker versions of herself, versions that sneered and laughed. But she wouldn't give in. Not now. When the stakes were so high, Julia found herself at the edge of the shattered mirror shards, a maze of sharp reflections. Everything twisted as she gazed into each fragment, the faces of the lost locked in a spectral dance behind her, their fingers brushing against the glass in a futile bid for escape. She grit her teeth. "I want to let you take me." In a final surge of will, she lunged forward into the chaos, where the reflections of her children danced tauntingly with twisted figures of despair. "Help us!" they cried, but their voices melded into the endless rush of darkness swirling around her. Suddenly, a path opened up before her, jagged edges like jagged teeth. Beyond it lay a deeper darkness, grim and pulsating. That direction felt charged with something different, a force that held a dread promise. Instinctively, she knew she had to take it, that this was the perilous heart of the shadows, and perhaps the only way to her children. "Mommy, this way." Lily's voice pierced through, brighter than the swirling chaos. It hung on the edges of desperation, urging her to choose. With one last glance at the shattered mirrors around her, their voices rising in a gut-wrenching anthem, Julia sprinted toward the depth of the darkness, heart racing. The moment she crossed the threshold, the oppressive weight lifted for an instant, like a breath held too long. Then an icy grip seized her ankle, pulling her down. Darkness surged towards her, twisting and curling like smoke. "Fight!" She screamed into the void as she flailed against the force trying to claim her, fighting to remain upright, to claim her children's light against the vicious tide. But just as she felt herself slipping away, a blinding light erupted behind her. The mirror shards showed a new reflection, one of strength, rising from despair. What was this newfound power? Could it truly save her children? As the shadows writhed and howled, clawing for her soul, Julia made the leap into the light, unsure of what awaited her but knowing it was her only chance. The darkness roared in fury, echoing her name as Julia disappeared into the blinding brilliance. But as the light enveloped her, every ounce of doubt solidified into a question. What truth awaited her beyond this veil, and would she ever see her children again? The light consumed Julia, wrapping her in a cocoon of brilliance that pulsed like a heartbeat. It felt warm, but also strangely distant, almost mocking the surrounding darkness that howled in frustration. She shut her eyes and let the light fill her, praying it would somehow bridge the chasm between her and her children. "Mommy." The voice was clearer now, echoing like a bell ringing in a quiet church. It broke through the haze. Julia's heart surged. She clutched at the warmth, at the sound, letting it pull her forward. When Julia opened her eyes again, she was no longer in the dark abyss dropped into her soul. Instead, she stood in a vast, empty hall, its high ceilings disappearing into shadow. The walls were lined with ancient portraits, faces frozen in time. Each pair of eyes glistened, their gazes heavy with stories long buried, but her focus was elsewhere. A golden light glimmered across the hall, shimmering amidst the dust and debris. She stumbled toward it, calling out, "Kids! Where are you?" The wooden floor creaked under her weight, each step a reminder of how fragile her world had become. With every flicker of the golden light, a long-buried dread wrapped around her heart. Was it merely a trap, baiting her with false hope? As she reached the light, it flared brightly, revealing a small, ornate mirror perched against the wall. It caught her breath, a mirror that didn't reflect back the empty hall but an image she recognized all too well, her children, trapped, their faces pressed against a barrier of shadow, wide eyes filled with terror. "No!" Julia screamed. "I'm coming." But the instant she reached for the mirror, the surface rippled like the surface of a pond disturbed by a stone. The children twisted in their prison, their mouths moving but soundless, as if the barrier stolen their ability to cry for help. "Mommy?" Lily's voice broke the silence, laced with confusion. "Where are you?" She pressed her small hands against the glass, and the image warped, sending ripples through the reflection. Julia's heart raced. The shadow realm must be holding them captive, using the power of the mirror to maintain their connection to her. And that power was fracturing. Desperation surged within her. She had come too far to falter now. She thrust her fists against the glass, feeling a thrum of energy pulse in the air around her. "Let them go." The mirror let out a low groan, the wall behind Julia vibrating as shadows coiled tighter, flowing like quicksand. Just then, the spectral faces in the portraits began to move, whispering in thin, ghostly tones. "You shouldn't have come here. This is not your battle." Julia shook her head, blocking out their words. "No. I want to abandon them." The light surrounding the mirror blazed, reflecting her anguish and resolve. The shadow shrieked, a guttural sound that reverberated through the hall, crumbling the edges of her courage. "Mommy!" The children cried again, now framed in the chaotic clash of light and dark. In that moment, Julia realized that she held the power. What she had sought was not just for her children but to confront the very darkness that sought to consume them. And she would unleash every ounce of it. With a primal scream, she launched herself at the mirror once more, determined to break its hold on her family. The walls shook violently, the air turned electric, and darkness surged toward her, trying to quench her light. "Fight!" Julia roared, feeling her strength meld with the brilliance radiating from within. The world around her trembled, shifting beneath the strain. Just as she collided with the mirror's surface, it shattered, sending shards flying, igniting the hall with a crescendo of light. But what lay beyond that sheen of brilliance? Was it freedom or something far more sinister waiting just out of sight? As the mirror shattered, she braced for the unimaginable, heart racing. What would they unleash on the world now? Light erupted around Julia, shimmering shards cutting through the darkness, each fragment echoing the cries and laughter of her children. The world tilted as she was catapulted through an infinite expanse, tumbling through a cascade of colors and emotions, memories resurfacing like bubbles in murky water. Then silence. Julia hit the ground hard, breath knocked from her as she landed in a patch of soft grass bathed in sunlight. Disoriented, she blinked up at the clear blue sky above, rays of golden warmth enveloping her like a divine embrace. The echoes faded, replaced by a stillness so profound it felt like a balm. But the world around her was unfamiliar, a vast landscape of green, untouched by the shadows she had just escaped. "Mommy!" She whipped around to find Lily and Ethan standing together, unharmed, eyes wide with fear and relief. She surged forward, gathering them into her arms, their warmth grounding her in that moment. The heartache, fear, and darkness began to drain away like smoke in the wind. "Oh, my babies!" she sobbed, holding them tight enough to feel their heartbeats thrumming against her chest. They squeezed her back, tiny hands clutching at her sweater. "I thought I lost you." Lily pulled back first, her bright eyes sparkling with unspoken questions. "We were lost, Mommy. We heard you, and then found you." But Julia's gaze drifted beyond them. All around, familiar elements remained: the homes of Maplewood, burnt memories now lush and vibrant, flowers blooming, the air sweet and promising with life. Yet, she sensed the remnants of darkness still slumbered beneath, waiting. "Is it really over?" Ethan asked, glancing past Julia's shoulder, uncertainty clear in his face. With newfound resolve and the love of her children coursing through her veins, Julia straightened. "We're safe now. Together." She took a moment, barely breathing, focusing on the warmth, her children's laughter flooding her senses. "But we can't let this place forget. We must remember." As if heeding her thoughts, the wind rustled through the trees behind them, carrying a whisper, one of relief and freedom, a farewell to the souls of Maplewood's past, those lost to the darkness. It felt like a pact, a promise she made to the very ground they stood upon. She would share their stories so they would not fade into the shadows. Something deep within whispered a call to embrace the light, the very essence of hope. Julia finally turned her focus back to her children, and in their bright eyes, she found her purpose once again. They would face the dawn together, the strength of their bond dispelling the shadows forever. But as they made their way back towards their home, she couldn't shake the feeling of those piercing eyes watching from nearby, the cold presence of the townspeople lingering like an unsettling chill. Mr. Hargrove stood on the periphery, a silent guardian, not entirely freed from the darkness. "Mr. Hargrove," she called, her heart racing, concern lacing her voice. But he only nodded solemnly, the weight of history hanging heavy over his shoulders. "Not all shadows can be banished, Julia. Some must be acknowledged," he said quietly, without malice. Julia nodded, understanding lighting her features. "Then we honor them. We tell their stories and fill Maplewood with the light it deserves." "Yes," he replied, a hint of pride threading through his words. There was hope for them still. That was what mattered. As they walked home hand in hand, Julia felt more than relief, she felt purpose. She'd buried truths, unearthed scars, and faced the malevolent unknown. She would not forget. The echoes of the past would be honored, woven into the fabric of a stronger future. Thunder rolled again, but it was no longer a harbinger of doom. It was a reminder, a sound of the tempest that had brought them here and a promise of brighter days ahead. In the embrace of the town they all cherished, Julia whispered a prayer for every lost soul. They were part of Maplewood now, forever loved, forever remembered. This was their new beginning. Thank you for joining Julia on this journey. What were your thoughts on the ending? Do you believe darkness can truly be vanquished, or does it remain, waiting? You need to subscribe now so you don't miss these exclusive tales. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and let others find this story. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who would love to explore the mysteries of Maplewood.